So please join me in giving Congressman Rigell a big hand of applause.
Thank you, Dave. Thank all of you. It's great to be here, and I like it. And that's worked out. By the way, this happened at the evening parade with the Commandant of the Marine Corps right there, and he was speaking, and it was cutting out, and he even said, I wouldn't want to be in charge of S5 or whatever that is that handles the technical glitches, but I think it's working now. But hey, thank you for your kind introduction, and really for this exceptional and special privilege to be with all of you today, with the families of those who are honoring at this celebration. It's good to see Clayton and all who are in leadership here at the center. I thought it'd be appropriate as well if I just briefly introduce the team who I serve with and are in service to each of you. If you need them, I'd like for you to know who they are. And Shannon is our district director. Office, and we'll hold I do want you to do some applause for them because they work hard like everybody here. But today's a very special day because I have the privilege of welcoming this time Terry Campbell. And Terry Campbell is our military liaison. Now, it's her first day. We had Bree Kingsbury, who served the district so well from the first day I had the privilege to take office, but Terry is eminently qualified to be our military liaison. She herself is a veteran. Her husband retired from the United States Navy. And importantly, and in a very special way, she is a Gold Star mom. Her son, Keelan, Lance Corporal, gave his life in service to our country in Afghanistan. And I asked Terry this. I said, Terry, is it all right? Is it okay that I mention that? She said, yes, it's good to remember the fallen. And I knew that I wanted her permission, but it was so appropriate, Vicki, for you to thank our men and women in uniform. Do so again, but for all of you who have worn our nation or a loved one did, thank you. And help Terry. Thank you. And listen, you know, this is an exceptional district. We have the highest concentration of men and women in uniform. There's so much history here. The water's beautiful. The bay's exceptionally special. And I have the privilege to represent not one, but two NASA facilities, of course, the facility here and the Wallops as well. And I could not have imagined when I was 8, 9, and 10 years old, growing up in Titusville, Florida, everybody seemed like their dad or mom worked out at the Cape. But boy, we knew when those Saturn rockets went off because literally 20, 25 miles away in Titusville, the ground would shake just like this. I'd walk out of my elementary school, we'd watch this go up, and you'd think there's 3 men on the top of that thing. An exceptional time. And that tradition remains. I really did want to do a good job today, and so I turned to somebody I love and respect greatly. I've known for 34 years, been married to for 33. My wife, Terry, some of you know her, and she's quite direct. And I said, Terry, I have this privilege, you know, speaking today over at Langley, and what's your advice? And she asked me what it was like, what the situation was. And I looked right at me, and she said, don't talk too long. People don't like long speeches. Listen, she'd make Donald Trump look a little weak-kneed, I think. But anyway, I'm going to try to keep that in mind. But there are some things I want to share with you as we go forward here. And, you know, David mentioned that I was raised by a NASA engineer, Iwo Jima veteran. And there's something special, I think, about growing up in a NASA home. You just have this bias toward a very optimistic view, toward the idea that we can do this, whatever it is. And I learned a few things from my father, Ike, that I wanted to share with you that is really in the DNA of NASA, and it's in the DNA of those whom we honor today. The first is innovation. The second is leadership, and specifically leadership by example. And then the third is a deep commitment to excellence. You know, our desire to explore the heavens, to push the boundaries of what we know in the fields of science and space exploration, I think this is among the most noble of the human endeavor. To look forward and to push and to really see God's expanse, the heavens. And all of you know as much as I do, or better, really far better, just how expansive and mysterious and wonderful that it is. Our commitment to innovation and our pressing forward on these things, it's what's defined us as a country. For the first time in my 55 years, I took a full week last week as a personal retreat. I gave my cell phone to my wife, Terry, and I was up in Washington. And after I got through of my withdrawal from the internet, I gave up my router and everything, but I was just there. I wanted to kind of think and read. And I found myself over at the Air and Space Museum at the Smithsonian. And I just finished David McCullough's book, The Wright Brothers. Some of you probably read it. And there I was looking at the original craft there that flew at Kitty Hawk. And one reason that the Wright brothers was successful was because they paid extraordinary attention, and they wanted to understand how the wind flowed over the wings. And we were in this grand competition with those who were in Europe, and indeed they were in competition with a fellow named Langley, if you look back at the history of all of it. But they were early pioneers, and they had a wind tunnel, things about this wide, and they pushed wind through there at about, I think, 23 miles an hour. But our DNA runs deep of exploration and innovation. There's something about who we are as Americans, and during that week, I saw David McCullough interviewed by a fellow named Ken Burns. Many of you know he's also a historian and a writer. And so here are these two brilliant men. And Ken Burns swung around and looked at David McCullough, and he said, David, tell us about American exceptionalism. And he said, first of all, now look, I know that term's loaded, and people use it for political reasons and all these other things. And David said, no, there's something to it. There is something to American exceptionalism. And it's this ability and desire and drive to say that we can solve whatever it is, that conundrum that you're presented with in your respective teams, and you go, how are we going to do that? But innovation, you come in every day and you say, I think maybe today's the day that we do that. What if we tried this? This is a characteristic of our country, and there's no better manifestation of it than NASA. And then within NASA today, you've taken on the exceptionally hard task of trying to recognize some. I wouldn't want that job. That'd be a tough job. But I appreciate it, and I respect it, especially as one who tried to follow my father's footsteps, went to University of Central Florida, as I was sharing with some of my friends here this morning or afternoon. I was over there in the School of Engineering, Steve, for only about 2 semesters. And I said, show me the business school. The math was a little over my head, so I really do. That STEM path I truly mean I tip my hat to you. But we explore the heavens. And we pursue that wonderful expanse to benefit mankind here on earth. We travel safer because of the work done here at Langley and all the work done at NASA. There's applications that have extended life. The work that you're doing is helping us to understand and expand our ability to advance in renewable fuels and energy. These are things that have very practical benefits right here at home. And part of my job and the job of others who love and understand NASA is to make that case to the broad American people and to Congress as well. And I consider it an honor to be able to stand strong for NASA in my service in Congress. The second trait that my dad has taught me, and my mother as well, not so much by what they said, but about how they've lived their lives, is leadership, and specifically, a servant leadership. It's just the quiet going about of doing the right thing when people are looking and when people are not. You know, today we're going to recognize people who are in leadership positions. They may have the title manager or director of some level behind their name, but we're also going to recognize some who maybe don't even, on a technical organizational chart, don't lead anyone, at least as far as the organizational chart is concerned, but they are leaders. They are leaders because others are watching them, and they're saying, wow, I see how the doctor has pursued this, or she has, or he has said that we can do this, and they've done their work with excellence, and they've stayed a little later and worked a little harder. There's a hard-working trait about NASA. My father's dinner so often was in the refrigerator or the stove, and we understood why, because he was working at something that was of great passion to him. You know, I mentioned that he served at NASA, and prior to that, he was actually a Marine, and I do note, I call him General Bolton. You know, of course, he's Administrator Bolton. That's his proper title now, but I'm delighted that there's a Marine up there serving and leading NASA. And the leadership by example trait, I followed my father's footsteps to become a Marine, though my path was not nearly as challenging or dangerous as my father's. I never got activated and never certainly got into harm's way. But there was not one thing that the drill instructor asked us to do that they did not first do themselves. And that principle of leading by example is evident here at the center. It's reflected in the quality of the work that's being done, and those who we're going to recognize here in just a few minutes. And I mentioned the excellence with which those who we're going to honor today, and really the entire center here, what's reflected in that is excellence. Former Secretary of State Colin Powell, General Powell, said this of excellence: if you're going to achieve excellence in big things, you develop the habit in little matters. Excellence is not an exception, it's the prevailing attitude. You know, just yesterday, Esmel and I had the privilege of meeting with a senior executive from the Chick-fil-A Corporation. I know that's a familiar name, I would think. And I said, what do you do for Chick-fil-A? He said, I'm really heading up their training. I go all over the country and talk about things, about leadership. And I said, well, what are some of the things you talk about? He said, well, first, one of them is excellence in execution and master the fundamentals. And just talking about the pursuit of excellence. And I thought, well, if excellence is important when you're making a Chick-fil-A sandwich, chicken sandwich, how much more important is it when we're putting human life into space or billions of dollars worth of investment? You know, you don't want someone to look at someone else and say, Bill, did you tighten that nut? No, I thought you did. That's not the culture we have at NASA. There's a precision about it. There is a thoughtful articulation of the mission, and then the careful execution of it. When I say I respect each of you, I mean that. And especially those for today. Tomorrow you'll go back to being just like everybody else. But today, we're going to love on you a little bit and tell you how much we appreciate you, and we're going to recognize you, and it's going to be a real pleasure to do that. Those are the three things: innovation, leading by example, and then the relentless and unapologetic pursuit of excellence that are reflected in those we're going to honor. And I want to speak to those who we're going to honor today just for a moment and really close with this. You're innovators. Keep innovating. You're leaders. You may wonder if somebody's watching you or not. We are, and your colleagues are. Keep leading by example. Those qualities that elevated you today to have you on the platform, that's good stuff. Keep doing that. And then third, that relentless pursuit of excellence. This is when we're at our best as Americans, is when we pursue excellence and believe that we can do it, and a careful attention to detail. You know, as I was writing all this out and a few points to share with you today, there's a little voice that I heard in my head. Ike Rigell. I FaceTime him every week. You know, my mom, and his voice kind of echoes, and I could almost hear him saying, hey, Scott, it's nice to look back, and it's nice to reflect back on, you know, NASA's heritage and, you know, the missions that have been done all the way going back to where we whooped them right after Sputnik got us for a little bit, but after that we got on it and have whooped them pretty much ever since. He said, in my mind, it's nice to look back, but NASA's about the future. And a bold vision about the future. And I just want to close with this. How do we honor the legacy NASA members, those who came before you? And how do we honor those who have given so much that we live in the greatest country on the face of the earth? With all the challenges and all the difficulties that we have, there is no place like America and no greater hope than America. How do we honor them? We honor them in some ways by these words, by this fine Marine, my daddy said, Scott, without great battles to fight, there are no great victories to celebrate. We're going to celebrate some victories here today, but I'd submit to you just from one American to another that we're in a struggle and in a fight, but we can do this. I'm so proud of NASA. I'm so proud to represent you in Congress, and I'm so proud of our honorees today. Thank you, Dave, for the opportunity to be here with these wonderful NASA staff members and colleagues and their families. Thank you.